Hey everyone, I am your astrologer Wonder Girl, taking you to new heights. This is your astrology horoscope for the new moon in Aquarius, which happens on Thursday, February 11th, 2021 at 2:04 p.m. Eastern time or 11:04 a.m. Pacific time. Now, what I think this new moon is really all about is about us recommitting to our authentic truth and to realigning a lot of things still in our lives to that authentic truth that makes us feel more free and more liberated to be who it is that we are. Not only do I think that this new moon is about us recommitting to ourselves and to what we need in order to feel free in life, but I think it's also about us opening up our minds as well as a result to a totally new way of living, of doing relationships, of being in relationships, of doing money, and experiencing life as well, that I think is meant to bring a personal renaissance of some sort and to help us revolutionize who we are and how we act. So that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. If you want to hear more about that, please stay tuned. Before I get started though, I did just want to let you all know that I do daily horoscope videos on horoscope.com. I actually have done them for quite some time, but I want to remind you all that if you want to watch more videos from me, and if you want like shorter videos, then that's the place to go. Those horoscope videos that I do daily are about like 6 minutes tops, where I break down a few of my like favorite alignments going on for that day. So please feel free to check me out there. I will put the link in the description box down below so that you can access me on their website. I believe my video, it will be kind of small and in the corner on the sidebar somewhere, but it's there if you want them. Also, if you want longer videos from me, a lot of you all know that I'm a talker, or videos around like this length and otherwise, then I also do more videos on my website as well, where you can subscribe to those, wondergirlastrology.com, and I do very in-depth readings there about what is going on. So feel free to check those things out. Now, let's go ahead and hop in to this new moon. Before I actually talk about the new moon though and what it means, I always do like to place it first on the chart so that you can see what I'm referring to and follow along. So I'm going to do that now. The new moon has to do with the moon, right? So we're going to look at where that is. Here is the moon, 23 degrees Aquarius, and it's exactly conjunct the sun in Aquarius, which makes a new moon when the moon conjuncts the sun here, same degree, same sign. All right, what are new moons all about? Well, new moons are new. They start a lunar cycle, a new lunar month. So what that means to me is that when we get a new moon, some kind of new energy comes into our lives in some way, shape, or form. If it's not like new energy, a new feeling, if you will, because the moon is involved and the moon is about feelings, a new energy or a new feeling, then it can also be like a new focus. We can put our focus in life on a new area to really work that out or work that theme out and to move it forward. All right, so that to me is in general what goes on at new moons. What are we getting like a new feeling about, or new energy, or a new focus on at this time? Aquarius, because the new moon is in Aquarius. What is Aquarius about? Well, Aquarius is about a few things. One of the first things that I think of when I think of Aquarius is about the future. Aquarius is very forward thinking. It cares about the future, goals and dreams that eventually can happen down the line. So one of the first things that's going on at this new moon that we're getting a new energy, new feeling, or new focus on is to think more about our future and what we want down the line and how we can get that future or move towards it in some way, with better goals and dreams. Another thing as well that Aquarius also has to do with, in my opinion, is like our authentic self, where we feel free to be whoever it is that we are, not who we're supposed to be, not who we need to be to please others, but like who we are truly and authentically at our core. So another thing that's going on at this new moon is not only that we're getting like renewed feelings or energy and focus to think about our future and how we can get there, but to think about a future in which we feel more free to be ourselves and more authentically ourselves from here on out. So there's a lot of that that's going on at this time. Okay, another thing as well that Aquarius to me has to do with is also friends. It has to do with your friend group or your support group or the people that you network with as well. So another thing that we're getting a new energy or a new focus on at this new moon is not only to figure out like, what do we want for our future that's more authentic and true to us and more free and liberating, but we're also trying to figure out what people fit into that equation, what people in our lives really get our authentic truth and support it and need to come with us, and what people don't, and that we might need to let go of in order to move on. So there's a lot of that's coming on here. If there's any other just general notes that I should also make about Aquarius is that Aquarius is an air sign. It does have a lot to do with thinking. So and talking in some way. All the air signs do. So in order for us to like reach this different future that's more authentic, true, free, and liberating to us with better people or with people who just align and get us more, we may be doing lots of thinking and talking at this time, especially with the new moon conjunct Mercury, which I'll talk about in a minute. We may be doing lots of thinking and talking at this time to ourselves or with the other people that we're involved with in order to figure out like who's meant to come with us in this new authentic journey and who's not, and to make those switches to bring people in and to cut people out. Another thing I should also note as well is that Aquarius is the sign of the unexpected, being naturally ruled by Uranus. So another note that I want to make as well is not only is there a lot of thinking and talking at this time about our future, what our authentic truth is and who fits into this equation with ourselves or other people, but there may be some unexpected events that happen. Something unexpected may happen to us as another person figures out whether they want us in their life or not, or as they figure things out, or we could do something sudden and unexpected to someone else, have an unexpected conversation, unexpected news, an unexpected thought in order to bring more of these things together as we move on. Okay, are these things good unexpected things or bad unexpected things? I will say at this time, I think it does depend a lot on your personal circumstance and on your own chart with some alignments going on, another of which I'll explain in a minute. So I'm not really going to say too much during this video whether or not these things are good or bad. I'm just here to explain unexpected events are going on so that people can realign their life down the future to their authentic truth. Some of you are going to have really beautiful, unexpected expressions of this with yourself, with another person, going to be very good. And some of you may have the more challenging ones. It's just up to you to intuit that and figure out what's going on in your life and to assess it from there. Okay, but that to me is by far the main focus and the main theme of this time period. Now, before I move forward to give you more detail about this new moon and what it's about, I do like to go backwards first in order to give you the context of how we got here or the story so far. And in order to go give you that context, I'm now going to go back to the last solar eclipse, which was a new moon in Sagittarius around the middle of December. I'm going to go back to that because solar eclipses are like pretty big deals that last for at least 6 months, but many times like for many years longer. So I'm going to go back to that. That last new moon solar eclipse was in Sagittarius, the last degrees, the middle of December, right here. What do I think that was about? I think that was about us stepping into a drastically new, different, better, and blessed chapter of life that's very different than what we've been experiencing for the past like few decades of our life. And I think like much happier. I just like better all around. I just like it. Okay, and I think that that's what that was about. The new moon in Sagittarius, solar eclipse, ushering in major new chapter of life, much better than what we've been through after a really hard past few months, years, and decades, right? And not only did that happen at that new moon solar eclipse in Sagittarius, but a month later we had a new moon in Capricorn, okay, right about here. And that new moon in Capricorn on top of Pluto, which is also important, was about us trying to manage and structure this new and blessed chapter of life away from these old things that I believe truly did arrive. But last month, as we were trying to manage and structure this new and better chapter in life so that it could take hold and move us forward in a more better, permanent, long-term way. I think we ran into problems doing that. We ran into problems seeing this new life really take hold and flourish. Why did we run into problems? There are a lot of reasons why we ran into problems, but I think the main reason why we ran into problems is because there was some part of our identity, of our core, of us, at our soul, that was still stuck in these old chapters, that still identified with them in some way, even though they had gone. And identified with them so deeply and so ingrained with our soul that we didn't even realize that we were doing it and that it was causing the problems. And because that's what I think we realized was stopping us last month, especially around that full moon in Leo, we have taken steps since that time to release the old identity that was keeping us stuck, that was sabotaging us, that was making us feel like we aren't worthy of better chapters in life, or making us feel like a victim, or what have you. We spent the past 2 weeks since that full moon in Leo releasing that old identity that was not serving us and figuring out a new way of being that's going to be better. And this new moon in Aquarius, which is happening now, which is for what this video is for, is about us continuing that process of, sure, releasing the old identity. The sun has a lot to do with that, but about creating a new identity for our future that's better for us, that's more freeing, more authentic to us, and that's finally going to allow this new, better, blessed chapter in life that I've been talking about to more fully come into the picture and to actually happen and to feel more real, and for us to connect with the people. Like, people are important, we're humans, and for us to start to connect more with the people who are going to be able to propel us forward instead of bring us backwards. Okay, so I hope that helps you understand some of the context of what is going on at this new moon in Aquarius. Just to repeat that, because that was a lot of information that I brought together from my past videos and from the past astrology. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to just repeat what I think is going on at this new moon in Aquarius is that we are continuing to release an old identity and to create a new identity and work towards a new identity in the future that's going to be more authentic to us, more true to us, more freeing and more liberating, and help us to connect more with the people we need to connect more with down the line in order to move on, that I like a lot. And this new moon as well is about us having perhaps the unexpected thoughts and conversations with ourselves and other people in order to figure out what our authentic truth is, how we can bring things together, and who is meant to come with us moving forward and who is not. Okay. So that's what I'll say there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take like a little bit of a closer look at the astrological alignments that are actually happening at this new moon itself. I'm going to like zoom in to the new moon so that hopefully you can see it more clearly what's going on. The first alignment that I want to talk about that's happening at this new moon is actually not the alignments that the new moon itself is making, even though there are a couple of those I want to talk about. The one I want to go to first is going to be this one with Saturn here in Aquarius at the exact time of this new moon, making a square, or coming into a square very soon, to Uranus and Taurus. Why do I want to talk about this alignment first? I want to talk about it first because the ruler of this new moon is both Saturn and Uranus, because it's in Aquarius, and Aquarius is ruled by both Saturn and Uranus. And here you have Saturn and Uranus in a major alignment together, while Saturn is in its home sign of Aquarius, even though Uranus is elsewhere. Not only do I want to talk about this first because of that, I also want to talk about this first too, because this is a major alignment. Saturn and Uranus are both slower moving planets. They don't square that often or make aspects to each other like too terribly often either, not like the other planets do. So it's also very important. Not only do I want to talk about this alignment for those reasons, but I also want to talk about it too, because this is going to be one of the most defining alignments of 2021, meaning it will last all year. Most of the year, which pretty much is like from now until November, October. So most of the year. And that's because Saturn is going to go further a little bit, but it's eventually, I'm not quite sure. I think it's going to get to around 10 to 12 degrees Aquarius, and then it's going to back up and go retrograde over this square to Uranus, meaning whatever this alignment is bringing is starting now in a big way at this new moon. I think it really started a little bit like a few days and weeks before this, but it's starting really big now at this new moon and is going to continue for the whole year that we're going to be dealing with and working out and trying to move forward on. So what is this alignment? Saturn, whenever I see Saturn involved, especially by hard aspect, I think decisions. Saturn is it's a serious planet. It likes decisions, it likes commitments, it likes to know what is going on, what isn't going on, what is best for me, what isn't best for me. So what this indicates to me here is that at this new moon, we are, yes, creating a new identity that, and working towards it in the future that's more true, more authentic to us, so we can have a more freeing life with people and places and things in it that we love and that get us in some way. But that in order for us to get that life in the future, we may have to make some decisions, some serious, big, serious, life-changing Saturn decisions, big, serious, life-changing decisions here in order to figure that out, in order to figure out, again, what is meant for us in life and what is not meant for us in life, what is meant to come with us and needs to be brought on board, and what is not meant to come with us and needs to be Uranus broken free from, liberated from, in order for us to move on. We need to make these decisions and we need to make these commitments. Again, are these easy or are these hard? It really depends on how you deal with Saturn. So I can't say for sure, like, are these good decisions or bad decisions? Saturn really just depends if how you've been working with it beforehand, the choices that you've made, and what's going on here. I will say, I do think these decisions are meant to be good down the line. They are meant to get us somewhere good, somewhere better, but making the decisions for some of us could be easy in the moment and things we've been wanting to do and wanting to make for such a long time. And some of these decisions could be hard in the moment because we may realize we have to let things go that we don't want to let go of. Again, it's not for me to say how this exactly is going to play out because Saturn depends, but it's just for me to explain here that in order for us to create a more authentic future, we need to be serious here and we need to make big, life-changing decisions about what we do want and what we don't want, what needs to come into our life and what needs to live our life in order to move on. And this can be relationship related. I should note, we need to make decisions about people. I want you in my life. I don't want you in my life. This is or is not going to work. We also need to make decisions too about how we work with people. Let's say a relationship isn't involved. We need to make decisions about what, if I were to be in a relationship, what is acceptable for me that I need to feel free and what is not. So there's also a lot of thoughts and conversations going on about that at this time as well. Not only are these decisions about that, but they could also be about you and how you want to live your life and what you want to, like, what's important to you. And it could also be about your money, how you want to make money, how you don't want to make money. Involved, especially with Venus making a significant aspect around this time, fairly close to this new moon. And it could also be about your time, your space, your resources, your habits, your routines, as well, leading up to a full moon in Virgo, about how all that comes together. So it could really run the gamut. And I think it's meant to, I think this is meant to be everything. Everything about our lives is supposed to be Aquarius revolutionized. It's really everything that's coming on here, but we need to be intentional. Saturn, we need to be conscious and we need to be intentional here about what we're bringing into our lives and what we're not, and about how exactly that works from here on out, so that we can make sure that things are eventually going to align to this better vision of our future. Whether it's easy for some of you or whether it's hard for some of you, decisions, I do believe, and commitments need to be made. And the decisions and commitments that we start to make right now about what leaves our life and what comes into our lives are going to be, again, with us the whole rest of the year. So if some of you realize at this new moon in Aquarius, something needs to leave my life and you have to make a decision about it, it may take you until the end of the year to fully wean yourself off of that thing to overcome it, to move on. The old habit, the old routine, the old money thing, the old relationship. And for those of you, vice versa, for those of you who realize something new needs to come into my life, a new money thing that I need to decide, a new relationship, a new way of doing relationships, again, it may take you all of this year for that commitment to solidify with that person, to work everything out with the money, with the routine. But it's going to start now in a way that's necessary. Saturn to me has to do with necessary for our for our freedom, for our liberation, for our authentic truth to be shown down the line. And we need to not be afraid here of doing the hard thing in order to eventually get what we want, again in the future and not in the moment, because Aquarius is not about the moment. Aquarius is about what is down the line. So we may need to do, some of us, some things we don't want to do now, and to take, I don't know if take the time is quite the way I want to put it, but to do some things we don't want to do, and to be very intentional with it so that we can get to a better place in the future. Okay. So I think that's what I'll say there. And that these decisions that I think we're having to make here starting now, which are going to be all this year, are going to bring lots of thoughts and conversations, which I have already said in this video, because the new moon is conjunct Mercury. However, the point that I want to bring out here is that Mercury is still retrograde at the time of this new moon, even though it has already passed like the halfway period of this retrograde cycle. So what that means to me is that a lot of these decisions that we are making at this time about our future and what we want for our future that's more authentic may require us to go back to rethink, reorganize, rearrange old things in service of this new life, or to recommunicate with old people that either we haven't communicated with before, especially not in a true authentic way, or to readjust those relationships through conversation as we move forward. Not only again, we have to go back to old things, old people, old places to recommunicate things that haven't been communicated, at least not in the way that we need, in order to figure out like what's coming into our lives and what's leaving, and what's authentic to us and what's not, and what decision and commitment we need to make in order to move forward. Still doing that, but we may also need Mercury to rethink about ourselves and who we are and what's important to us moving onwards. There's a lot of rethinking of the identity, right? If we're going to embrace a new identity, we need to rethink our perceptions of ourselves. We need to rethink or do some critical thinking about what is true for us and what is just expected from us from other people, so that we can kind of break the expectations and do more of what we need to do. So there's a lot of that. Again, is this like, what kind of process is this? This new moon, including Mercury, is in a square to Mars and Taurus. And we know Mars is a little bit of a malefic planet here. So this can be a little bit overwhelming. It can be a little bit overwhelming with what's going on. I will say I'm trying to avoid the word good or bad, because I think at this new moon, there's going to be a lot of polarization. Some of you are going to get beautiful things happening in your life that you never thought were possible before. And some of you are going to have really hard realizations, especially with that Saturn square Uranus, that are going to require a lot of decisions you don't want to make. So I'm trying to avoid the word good or bad here because of that with the square to Mars, even though this typically does go a little bit more challenging. So the word I want to use here is overwhelming, regardless of whether you're getting a great new moon in Aquarius or a more challenging one. I do think for both groups, this is a very overwhelming process, that some of us are going to be overwhelmed by the fact that we have to let go of something we don't want to let go of. It's just going to be too much, too many feelings, too many thoughts, too many reconversations that we're going to have to learn how to get a handle on. Or these good things that are coming in are also going to be very overwhelming emotionally. Too many feelings, too many thoughts, good, but I still don't know what to do with them. I need to process as well. That can come in. And with the Mars and Taurus that we're going to need to get more stable with and more secure and more confident with as we move forward. We're going to need to learn, I guess, to put that in another way, to get more stable and more secure and more confident with the decisions that we need to make to let something go that does not support our authentic truth, and to bring something in that does, and to make the commitments to that. And this is like, I know I've already said this, but I want to keep impressing upon it. This is like a very serious process. There is something very black and white about this. I mean, Mercury is still retrograde, so maybe the black and white hasn't come in quite yet until that full moon in Virgo or so, about 2 weeks from now. But there is something at the end of this process very soon that needs to be a firm decision, that needs to be more black and white about what we want and what we don't, and that we need to hold true to, because these are fixed signs. The new moon is in Aquarius with a ton of planets in Aquarius, and Mars is in Taurus and Saturn squaring Uranus and Taurus, and the fixed signs don't back out of things. They don't back out of things. They don't change their mind. They aren't super wishy-washy about things. They figure out what they want and hold to it. So these decisions that we're making to rework relationships, to rework our time, our resources, our own sense of money, to rethink, recommunicate with old people or about things that we need in order to move on, that could be a bit overwhelming. These things here, once we make these decisions, we need to commit, we need to hold true to them and do our best back to the square to Mars to be stable, secure, and confident with them the best that we can, regardless if your situation is good or bad, to get your bearings with them so that you can move on. Okay, so I hope that gives some clarity here. This isn't let me make a decision for a day to do things differently with a person or to do things differently in my life and then forget about it the next day and revert back to the old patterns. Aquarius doesn't do that. Aquarius says future, 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 forward. So this isn't that. I'm going to make a little decision for a little bit of a day with a person and then revert back. There's just something very serious over the course of the next 2 weeks about this new moon in Aquarius and possibly even longer. That's like, you have to be firm here. When you make a decision to bring something into your life, and once you realize it's going to work, you have to commit to it, be stable, be secure, find your best to get your bearings amidst the overwhelming emotions, to work it out over the course of the year, to bring it in. And if there's anything that you realize has to leave your life, even if you don't want it to leave because you're kind of sad and nostalgic about it, which is fine. If there's a decision to have something leave your life, you need to commit to that and do your best to be as stable and secure and confident with that moving forward so that we aren't wishy-washy here. And can feel better as time goes on. And if we do that, I should note, I do feel a lot of positive things will come as a result. It's a little buried, like the positive good things are a little bit buried underneath the intensity of the situation and the heaviness of the decisions that we're making. It's a little bit buried, and of the unexpected events I should bring into the equation that may be going on in order to bring things in and move things out. It could feel a little bit heavy because of the intensity of what's going on, regardless of whether you're getting a good thing or a bad thing in your life. But I do think it is once we make that firm decision that our soul knows we need to make and commit to it, I do think there's a lot of beautiful things that can start to come, because Venus and Jupiter are conjunct at the time of this new moon in Aquarius. And those of you know I like Jupiter. To me, Jupiter, which was the ruler of the new moon solar eclipse in Sagittarius, Jupiter to me brings gifts, good luck, optimism, expansion, and wisdom and understanding. So once we make these firm decisions here to cut people out, or an old sense of ourselves out, or old routines, time, space, money, once we make that decision to cut some of those things out and to bring some more things in, then I think we're going to feel new energy that I thought we were going to feel 2 months ago at that new moon solar eclipse in Sagittarius. We're now going to start to feel totally new energy to reinvent the wheel, because Aquarius also has to do with invention, to reinvent the wheel, to reinvent ourselves, to reinvent who it is that we are, our relationships, our money, and to totally do something else and to see brand new horizons open up before us and reconceptualize all of that. So I think there are a lot of good things that are possible as a result of what goes on at this new moon and the decisions we make. We just have to make the decisions. Whether they're good or bad decisions, however you feel about them, we just have to make the decisions that deep down our soul knows we need to make. Maybe part of us doesn't want to make it, but that deep down our soul needs to make. And once we make those, new things are going to come in that are, I think, going to be like a dawn of a new day, like just totally crazy things, but are good about who we can be and what can happen next, that I like. And maybe if I can add just one other point, because that's really all I have to say in particular about this new moon. But maybe if I could add one other point, that's some advice, is that Mercury is kind of like in between Venus, Jupiter, and the new moon at this time, kind of bridging the gap together. So one other thought that I have is that, sure, we need to make the hard decisions about what is aligned with ourselves and what's not, and try to get our bearings the best within that, even if it's overwhelming. And not only do we need to do that, because that's going to lead to new possibilities and new opportunities and a total reconception of who we are, but maybe for some of us, in order to make that switch, to make the decisions to get more of the goods, some of us also may need to, like, I don't know if change is the word I want to use, but to change our thinking. Like, there may be some people who, this might not be for everyone, but there may be some people who are stuck in these old things that haven't been released yet, that aren't in alignment with our truth, because we may be thinking too small, or keeping our thinking in a box. And another message for some of you is with Mercury in Aquarius around all these planets at this time, for some of us, in order to make these decisions and recommunicate these things with people, to reorganize things, to get to a totally different experience, some of us may need to really work with our mindset here, so that we aren't limiting ourselves and playing it small when there are so many other possibilities out there that we could be. All right. And I think that's all I'm going to say in particular about this new moon. Okay. Maybe I'll just repeat, even though I do think I was surprisingly clear about this new moon, but I'll just repeat to bring it more together before I add a few other things. What I think is going on during this new moon in Aquarius is that we are totally realigning our lives, or continuing to realign our lives back to our authentic truth, so that we can live a more freeing existence in the future. Realigning our lives to our authentic truth may require us to make some big, heavy, serious decisions to bring people or things into our lives and to let people or things go, which is going to be with us for the rest of this year. These decisions may be heavy in the moment and be a bit overwhelming and unexpected as we rework a lot of things. However, they are going to lead to a new perspective, new experiences, new ways of being that are totally going to revolutionize our lives, how we live it, who we are, and how we think and experience things from here on out. Okay. Now, what I want to talk about next, I have, I think, 2 or 3 other things I want to do next. I have a metaphor that I want to give you. Then I want to look at the inside degree. And then I want to obviously pull a tarot card. And I think I'm going to go into my metaphor first. And I came prepared with some other things to pull up on the screen. But the thing I want to say is that this time period reminds me of the phrase that came to mind while I was thinking about it, the Renaissance. That's really not a phrase, it's like a time period. But the phrase, the time period of the Renaissance, or the phrase a Renaissance man or woman. So I want to explain what that is for a minute to hopefully inspire some of you. And I did some research. We're going to look at the Renaissance in a minute. But I think, is this what I want to look at? It is, but for some reason it's not showing on my screen. So sorry, just gotta get my computer working. Okay, I did prepare this beforehand, but you just never know how things are gonna go. Okay. There we go. Okay, so what I wanted to look at first was the concept of what a Renaissance person is. I think my understanding of a Renaissance man or a Renaissance woman is someone who's well versed in so many different areas of life, not just well versed in art and poetry and literature, but that's also well versed in sports and in business and in work and in all different areas of life. And that's really open to new ways of thinking, open to learning new things and assimilating new knowledge and expanding their worldview. And so that was a thing that really kind of struck me about this new moon in Aquarius, is that what is going on at this time is that a lot of us are totally being more open, or starting to be more open to new ideas, new thoughts, in ways that we weren't in the past, and new ways of thinking and believing. And not only are we open to more new ways of thinking and believing, but we're open to more new ways of thinking and believing that are like more holistic and that aren't isolated. Like, one of the things that I think about Aquarius to me is like, it is a sign that thinks about a lot of things in a lot of different ways and is very open-minded. So another point that, like, in terms of an intuitive message that I want to share is, not only at this new moon in Aquarius are we being totally open to like learning new things that we haven't learned before and experiencing new things that we haven't experienced before, but to bringing more of that together from various different sources and places, all these new ideas in more of a holistic way that really can resonate with us as a person. Another thing that I also liked about the idea of like a Renaissance man or a Renaissance woman too is the idea that it kind of teaches that we have more control, that we have, I don't know if control is the word I want to use, but that we are the creator of our own destiny. There's this thought with the idea of being a Renaissance person, not only are you like very well versed in a lot of different areas and very open-minded to a lot of different ideas and worldly of some sort that you kind of bring together in a more holistic way, but that knowledge and that understanding and that way of thinking gives you more of the ability to do the things that are important to you and to make more change in your life and to take more matters into your own hand and to move forward. Especially if we look at like the definition in this article, it talks about the idea of the Renaissance man obviously being from the Renaissance, which happened during the 14th century. But it also says here that that's the idea that a man can do all things if he will. He is the center of the universe, limitless in his capacities for development, and led to the notion that men should try to embrace all knowledge and develop their own capacities as full as possible. Okay, it also gives me the sense too from this as well. I liked the idea that not only can we do things and make things happen, but I like this too. We're limitless in our capacities to develop. Like maybe over the course of the past few years, especially, we felt like we couldn't grow, we couldn't develop. Like there were just things in our life that were stopping us from moving forward. And I think there's something as well about this new moon in Aquarius, and not only opens our mind up to a variety of different things that we then like amalgamate to make into something more whole and more empowering, but that this knowledge and this empowerment helps us to like gives us like a limitless potential in order to move forward. Okay. And I think that's what we're coming to. I think that's what we're coming to realize, especially after all the past few years, is that hard things have happened, but that we've overcome those hard things, and it's our responsibility, Aquarius, Saturn, Uranus, in order to overcome them and move on. And especially not only that it's our responsibility to move on regardless of our circumstance, regardless of what's happened, but that we can move on and that we need to. You know, I know there's some people with my videos who always talk to me about COVID. Like, what do we do with COVID? COVID was a real thing. COVID happened. It was really hard for me. My money, my business, other things went to hell there. And I say, I totally believe that COVID was hard for a lot of us in some way. But I think one of the messages that's coming through, of course, or especially over the past few months since that new moon solar eclipse in Sagittarius, is yes, life has been hard. COVID sucked. There are a lot of bad things that happen in your life, but now that you know what you're dealing with, and now that you understand more what's going on, it's on us. It's on us to make the best decisions that we can with what has happened in order to overcome it and to create something else, and to bring all our various knowledge and wisdom from our experiences and from what we've learned together in order to move forward. There's something about this time period that's saying, I know you've been hurt, but you can't wallow in doubt and fear. There's a time to move on and to make the decisions to empower yourself. And if you haven't done that already, then now is the time to empower yourself to move on and to not feel like things are happening to you, but like you are an active participant and can maneuver things forward. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to see if there's anything else from this definition. The gifted men of the Renaissance sought to develop skills in all areas of knowledge, in physical development and social accomplishments and the arts. Yeah. You know, I don't want to keep going back to the idea of the masculine and feminine principles, because I know there's a lot of like controversial around that, and I'm clearly not well versed in that, but I do think there is kind of a thing going on with that, especially with the solar eclipses being in Cancer all last year, which to me is a very feminine, motherly sign. I do think there's a thing going on with that. And I just wanted to make also a little bit of a side note here, that the concept that I like about the Renaissance man, not that it can't be like a Renaissance woman, but the phrase is more Renaissance man and not Renaissance women. The thing that I also like, if you wanted to talk about masculine and feminine in regards to this, is that it talks about how a Renaissance man is skilled in all areas that you might think a man would be skilled in, but also is skilled in like the arts as well. And for some reason, I see arts as like more of a feminine, like girly thing. And the other idea that I liked about this too is to think about the masculine and the feminine, is that this to me is also signifying as well, again, another thought to me that the masculine is like, with masculine within us, or masculine people, are sure starting to continue to gain like more power and more strength gradually as time goes on, especially if it hasn't been there over the course of the past few months and years in the way we might like, but that the masculine is becoming more accepting of things that are traditionally like considered feminine and more honoring of the feminine, and it isn't looking down on them as much, but is realizing that it's human. It's a human thing. It's a natural part of life, and bringing it together in a healthier way. So that's another thought that I had there. I also looked up the Renaissance. I think the next thing that I also wanted to mention about the Renaissance too is that this is actually kind of correlated to similar stuff that's going on right now in the astrology. So this isn't something that like, I mean, it is something that kind of just came to me and that I think is a fun like metaphor and that explains a lot of things. But I also wanted to mention too that this is, there is some kind of astrological truth to this as well. Some sources have that the Renaissance started in the 14th century, which was about the 1300s. Again, I'm not a history buff, so it could have started a little bit after and things like that, but I'm pretty sure my sources said the 1300s. And if we want to take a look at the 1300s, which is when the Renaissance started in Italy, which I have on the screen, I think what's very interesting, I'm going to see if I can get a pen out here, is that the Renaissance started when Pluto was in Aquarius, all right? Sure, in this chart, the day that I just happened to draw this up for, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, and Mars were in Aquarius, but that they move pretty fast, so they're going to be out of there. The point I want to make is that Pluto was in Aquarius at that time. Now, Pluto is not in Aquarius right now, but in the next 3 or 4 years, Pluto is going to be in Aquarius. It's going to be there, which is similar to what started the time of the Renaissance. So what that means to me is that there is something very similar, not extremely similar, like they're not extremely similar, but that there is something in some way that's kind of similar to the Renaissance that is starting to go on now. Saturn in Aquarius, square Uranus with the new moon in Aquarius and a whole bunch of planets is like heralding something of a renaissance to totally reinvent our lives, which is going to come more and more and more and more and more into the picture as time moves on. It's just going to get bigger. Like whatever this new moon in Aquarius is bringing is like the beginning of a lot more, a lot more to come. I personally believe that the age of Aquarius already kind of started a while ago. So I'm not like, I don't think that this is the beginning of the age of Aquarius, but I do believe that this is the explosion of the age of Aquarius, if you will, or the increase of the age of the Aquarius, or the momentum that the age of Aquarius is just now going to start to get to totally bring a revolution, the way that we paint, that we read, the information that we receive in order to move us forward. Okay, so I wanted to point that out for some of you. Now, Pluto has been in Aquarius, I believe, at other points in history, not right now and not related to the Renaissance, but I didn't do the research on what those would have brought in order to give you more of the information about that. Another thought that I want to say before I go to the inside degree as well, is that another metaphor that this also reminded me of is like some rides at Disney. I don't know if you all have been to Disney, but Disney is like my favorite place on earth. I love Disney so much. It makes me so happy. We have like, my family has like a whole bunch of memories in Disney. A family member owns a home there, so we're always there. We're always at the parks. And there's 2 rides they absolutely love at Disney. One of them is in Epcot. It's the ride in the ball called Spaceship Earth. And this new moon also kind of reminds me of that ride, Spaceship Earth and Epcot. Because what happens in that ride, for those of you who haven't been in it, is that it's literally like the journey of civilization from like very early when we were cavemen all the way until now. And it even like, you know, hypothesizes about what will happen in the future. And you take this ride through like these exhibits that are like robots doing things, and it goes through significant points in history when papyrus was invented and the printing press is invented and iPhones were invented and computers were invented, and it just goes through all of that. And something about this new moon reminds me of like something new is about to be invented within ourselves and to move us forward in some way. And I think the feeling about that ride that strikes me the most is not so much like the inventions there, but of like how much more exciting and interesting and like fun life gets as a result. Because in that ride, you go from like the loneliness of the caveman and of the dark ages, if you will, you go from the loneliness of that to electricity and lights being on and people reading books and people watching movies and being on computers and music happening and on the radio and people talking to each other on TV. So another thing that I really liked about this metaphor and this ride too is not only the sense of like something new is being born that's going to totally revolutionize who we are and bring like new energy into it and propel us forward, but that life's going to become a lot more lively after this and a bit more exciting and less lonely, especially because Aquarius is about friends. It's going to come less lonely, but we just have to make the decisions first and the commitments to cut things out that are not progressive for us and to bring the things in that are. But I really, really love that ride. I also should note, I really love the Carousel of Progress at the Magic Kingdom and Tomorrowland too. My sister thinks those rides are so lame because they're not fast moving, they're not exciting, but I could ride those all day because they're so inspiring to me and I like seeing the history of things. But just thought I would mention that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the inside degrees to give you more insight about what is happening. So I'm going to adjust my chart or my screen now. Okay, this new moon is at 23 degrees Aquarius, but I think I feel 24. I feel 24 more intuitively. So that's what I'm going to do. If you want to read 23, you can. You can pause the video now and read it, but I like 24. So I'm going to look at that one. Okay, what does it say? It says, gross indulgence and a conscience that just won't quit, saturating your energy field with exaggerated gestures of capitulation to your own lower nature. What does this mean to me? I don't know if this applies to everyone. It's up for you to decide, but I definitely feel like part of what's going on here for some people is that some people know in their soul, they know deep down what they need to do. They need to cut someone. You need to cut someone out of your life, cut some routine out of your life, cut some money source out of your life, and you need to bring someone else in or do something different or do something in a different way. And there's a part of you that isn't letting yourself do it. There's a part of you that your conscience knows, I need to do this. This is the right thing to do. I should do this. This is better for my highest good. Conscience that just won't quit, but I want to indulge the lower natures, the lower urges of my lower nature. So maybe it's not for all of you. Maybe some of you are like super in tune with the Aquarius energy and are very good with Aquarius and are just like, Wonder Girl, I'm ready for the future. I've been preparing for this day. I want to be my authentic self. Finally, the world is turning in my favor, even if it takes more time to do. And maybe there are others of you who are like, I know I need to be my authentic self. I know I need to do these things, but I want this. this feels safe, this feels comfortable, but what about this? There's that dichotomy that is hard, that some of you are gonna have to work with. Okay, and I do think there's a part, I do think the people that are experiencing this right now, especially because look at this, the next line says, you do this in continual ironic juxtaposition to an observing intelligence and a keen conscience which deplore and have no use for your own shenanigans. You know, I mean, Aquarius is an air sign and it's ruled by Saturn. You know, it is a bit tough. So I don't know, there's some of you out there who know what you need to know, who know what you need to do, but are trying to make excuses for it. I know I need to bring this person in, but I'm scared. But what if it doesn't work? I know I need to let this person go, but what if they're not around anymore? What if this happens? What if, you know, oh, but I don't want to do this. I kind of like my life being a mess. You know, there's some of that. So that's a message for some of you. Some of you know what you need to do and aren't doing it, and you need to work that out. Work that out. Being split between the compulsive and addictive personality and the dispassionate and isolely removed consciousness. And there may still be some of that, I should note, with Venus currently, I mean, with Neptune currently at this time, still kind of in the square to the nodes, even though the nodes are moving on. There's still some of us who may be having fantasyland delusions about things, still feeling victimized and all of that. And this degree in Aquarius is really working with you on that. Okay, I don't think that this really, these whole sentences say anything like, to me, all these sentences kind of repeat the same idea of like, you know what you need to do and you're not doing it. But I really like the way that it says it. It really, to me, gets to the brass tacks. So if some of you are having problems doing what you know you need to do and you're fighting with yourself, that might be some good sentences for you to read in order to help yourself with that. But the next few lines to me offer some advice. It says you're trying to turn yourself around by alternately binging and reforming, but each binge triggers a reaction of the other side of mind, and each renunciation and reformation in turn triggers a further reaction. Okay, so what this means to me is that for those of you who are struggling with this, which if I can be honest, I feel like there are quite a few people, not everyone who's watching this video, but quite a few people that are. Some of you, the people that you're dealing with, are feeling this. And what this means to me is that what may be happening with these people who know what they need to do but aren't doing it is that there's this back and forth of like, I know I need to let this person go. I kind of do it, but then I revert back to bringing this person in. Like, I kind of know I need to bring this person into my life, but I'm afraid. And then I let them go and then I come back. There's like this back and forth of like half doing what you should do and not whole doing it. And that needs to quit. Like, not only is this inside degree saying you know what you need to do and you're not doing it, but you need to stop doing it halfway or pretending to do it or fooling yourself that you are doing it when you're really not doing it. Like, you need to be real here about these decisions that you need to make, because and to do it fully, because doing it halfway is continuing the vicious cycle. Like, doing something halfway of like kind of letting a person go and then not, and then bringing them back in continues the push and pull, the attachment and the unattachment, the arguments and all of that is only continuing that. And there needs to be, the cycle needs to end of like the do and don't, the yes and no, the maybe, kind of the I know I should but I don't want to. Like, it needs to end in order for us to move on. Okay, what does it say next? The only hope in this pattern lies in wearing out both ends so that a third place can open, in which neither acting out nor becoming exemplary is all that is necessary. You do what you do and you see it the way you see it, and all the self-conscious overlays and each and every self-manipulation, whatever direction, dissolve when the space is clear. So what that means, if that were to give some advice, a few things, especially for people who are dealing with this thing in particular, is this. It indicates that perhaps in order to stop this back and forth, knowing what you need to do and then not doing it, or like reneging on it, is to just wear both ends out, to go extreme to one side and extreme to the other, to see how it goes, extreme in order to fix it. Okay, that may need to be necessary for some of you at this time. Okay, if that doesn't help some of you, then another thought that I had about this is that even though I do feel as though some of you may need to go extreme one side and extreme other side before you finally get this middle place, I think there's a word for that called enantiodromia that Carl Jung used in one of his books. If you want to search that, where something turns into its opposite the more you do. Just a random thought for those of you who want to look it up. But another thing that I had about this too is that I actually feel like this is ending and that this new moon is heralding the end of this. So my thought is that for some of you are having this particular problem, you may need to start going to extremes so that by the end of this year, you can finally make the decision you need to make. Because let's face it, you know, sometimes people need more time to do things that the astrology indicates, and Saturn is going to square Uranus all this year to do things more fully. And if that doesn't work for some of you, the thought I'm trying to get to is that if I had to be honest about how I intuitively feel about this to me is not the beginning of this process, even though some of you may need that. Just trying to give some advice. This to me, I really feel that this is the end of this process. I personally really feel that this new moon in Aquarius is the end of these going back and forth to extremes, and is the need to make a decision. Is the need to make a decision and to find like the middle way, because it says this: you do what you do and you see it the way you see it, and that's all there is. So I take what resonates. I personally believe that this new moon marks the end of the back and forth and the need to make a decision, to remove yourself from the fray, to move things forward. But for those of you who still feel like you need more time, which is fine, maybe spend now until Saturn square Uranus finishes in October, November, more fully committing to yes, let's be together, or no, let's not be together. No, let's not do this thing for a significant period of time, not for a few days, but for a few months, in order to see what's going to work and what's not, and if it's meant for you, so that by the end of the year, maybe you can commit in the ways that you need to moving on. So that's the message for some of you. And of course, the other point that I wanted to tease out is the middle way is super important. You know, part of what, right, the middle way is super important. Part of the problem between the making of the decision, if again, you're struggling with this, is the back and the forth, is the extremes, right? Something in the middle needs to emerge where you remove yourself from the fray, or from the dichotomy as well, needs to happen. So again, that's just some advice for some of you who need it. Some of you got a longer process of making this decision for whatever reason. It's just harder for you. You need to start committing to something you've never done before and just trying it more fully, putting it into practice for months, and then check back in to see how it goes, and then do the opposite. Others of you, this time of back and forth is ending. You need to make a decision now, and you need to find the middle way out of the fray. Okay, so I hope that helps. I will tell you, I'm like, do I want to share this? I'm like, this is a really hard degree for me, because my like first love and my ex-boyfriend, who I dated for like 5 or 6 years, the last person I dated had his moon at 24 degrees Aquarius, and it was just heartbreaking. Just heartbreaking. I'm like, I don't know what to say there. I will say that, yeah, it was just very heartbreaking to see him kind of go like back and forth between these things. I mean, he had, I should know, like a very hard family life that brought on like a lot of responsibility very, very early on, that I think made it really difficult for him to like have his freedom and to do what he wanted to do, which brought like really extreme things which were unrelated to me. But that, of course, like I got involved in because I like really loved him and really cared about him. So I will say that this is like a really, really hard degree for me at this time, but and I totally understand how this can play out more than you know, especially those of you who are dealing with this, which is really uncomfortable, which is hard. And this is also a little bit hard for me to explain personally as well, because this is like what I've been dealing with for Saturn, Pluto, you know, all of last year, like Saturn and Pluto, that conjunction. I know for a lot of people about like really hard things with like COVID and work and money and all of that. And I've been really lucky, like with COVID to totally be fine. Like my life was COVID proof. I already don't go out. I don't talk to many people. Like all my work is online. So my life has been fine with COVID. But the Saturn Pluto for me, like last year, it was on my descendant. I'm a Cancer rising. It was really a lot about me healing from the relationship with the Aquarius moon, 24 degrees, and dealing with that. That relationship, I should note, has been over for a very long time. That was during college. I think it ended when I was like 22, and now I'm 32. So that relationship ended a really, really long time ago. But we recently reconnected when Mars went retrograde at this degree in spring of 2018. So there may be significant things correlated to this new moon that happened in April of 2018 that we're like now working out and figuring out in a better way. But we reconnected when we were about 29, 30 after our Saturn returns in April of 2018, and it brought like a whole bunch of feelings back since like of that time when we were together for about 5 or 6 years, where I realized that like I was still in love with him, and like, you know, that was like a whole thing. And it was just been really hard. So that's been my whole thing with like the Saturn and Pluto, is like really trying to heal from and overcome that after like all of that happened. And I had a lot of hard things too go on in my life, like around that time we were together. Like it was just a really volatile time for me and him, sure, as individuals, but it was like our personal lives unrelated to us that was really, really hard. So I think it was, and like, sorry, I'm like still emotional. It was like just a lot of things about that's been going on. And that was really what the past few years for me have been about. I feel much better about it now. Like I'll always love him and care about him, and that's fine. But it was really hard for me, I will say, over the past 2 years, like lots of crying and, you know, soul searching and trying to figure out like what happened and what went wrong and why. And even though we reconnected in 2018, like we really weren't a thing. Like we talked for a good bit, I would say, for like a few months, and like he'll still talk to me on occasion and like text and things like that, but it was never really like anything or really anything significant. So it's just been a very interesting experience. But I will say I think that this, now that I've explained all that, I think that this new moon in Aquarius is meant to be a good thing to help us move on. But for those of you who are struggling with this, I understand how big the struggle is, and it is really heartbreaking for those of you who are feeling it, or for those of you who are dealing with relationships who are like this. And I am so sorry. Your card for this time period is the Four of Pentacles upright. What is this about? You know, when I see the Four of Pentacles, I actually think of as like stubbornness. Like that's the word that always crosses my mind, as being stubborn. And we do have Mars and Taurus, and Taurus to me is a little bit of a stubborn sign, and so are like the fixed signs. They're all a bit stubborn. And so, but it's upright. So that to me is a good thing. So my advice with the card is that I really do think some of us need to stay fixed and stay stubborn when it comes to our values, and when it comes to our truth, and when it comes to what's important to us, and not sacrifice that. There are things we need to sacrifice, and there are things we need to not sacrifice. And I think the things we need to not sacrifice is our values and maybe our morals, and also what we know we need in order to feel authentically true. And that, I think, is what this new moon is about in a big way, is holding true to what is authentic to us, and not giving up on that. But another interesting thing I should also note about the Four of Pentacles is that even though there is something about being stubborn and like holding true to what's important to you, if you do notice, like she's kind of resting. This is the Mermaid Tarot. She's kind of resting in this card. She's not like working too hard. A matter of fact, she's like near a waterfall, like combing her hair with like a nice necklace on. So even though there is a need to like be stubborn and to hold true to what is your authentic truth and to move it forward, It doesn't mean you have to fight, or it doesn't mean you have to force things. Like literally all you have to do is just stand in your power and say yes or no. No, I'm not going to move for that. We're done. Yes, I am going to do that. Let's bring that in. There's not like a whole bunch of craziness that has to go on, even if it feels crazy. All you have to do is say yes to the things you need to say yes to and say no to the things you need to say no to. And I think the rest is going to work itself out in the ways that you need. Okay, the card at the bottom of the deck is the King of Cups upright. The King of Cups to me is a lot about like managing your emotions. So what that indicates to me is that in order for us to like hold true to what is valuable to us and what will give us a better future, and say yes to the things we need to say yes to and say no to the things we need to say no to, we may have to manage our emotions so that they don't overwhelm us and that they don't get the best of us, especially with Aquarius being an air sign, the sign of the water bearer that bottles the emotion, that bottles the water, bottles the emotion. So there may be some of us as well that need to manage our emotions a bit better in order to stand in our truth and to not budge and to make these decisions that it is that we need. Again, for some of us, it could be hard, but with this card being upright, I do think it might be a little bit easier than you think it would be if you just did a little bit of a push in order to manage the emotions in order to move forward. We also have the Hanged Man reversed after this card at the bottom of the deck, and the Hanged Man reversed is really about us not being hung up anymore. It's about us not being stuck and freeing ourselves up from being stuck. So I do feel that once you manage your emotions, say yes to the things you need to say yes to and say no to the things you need to say no to without there being a whole big fanfare, that you're going to start to feel unstuck and like things can move forward, especially that new chapter in life that I've been talking about since December or so that kind of has arrived, but that we haven't felt fully. So I do feel like this new moon and this decision that we make is going to help us to get to that place that I think we arrived at a few months ago in a more real kind of way, where we're seeing more real results manifested in our reality. Okay, so that's what I want to say there. And there's another point before I go that I just also wanted to mention that came to me that I had thought about while I was planning this video, but just didn't mention at the time I was thinking of mentioning it. And another thing I wanted to note as well in a separate vein is that Aquarius is the sign of ruled by both Saturn and Uranus. Uranus to me is about opening our mind, our higher consciousness, and Saturn restricts a lot of things. So another thing that I wanted to note about that is how that interplay works, is that at this time with the Aquarius influence, we may be opening our mind to a bunch of new different things, possibilities, and experiences, but that even though we're opening our mind, we could still feel Saturn restricted from reaching those higher levels of consciousness that we're going to also have to break through, is that restriction of consciousness within our own soul in order to move forward, because we are bringing the limits on ourselves, like the limits that are now coming from here on out to manifest a life that we've wanted, in my opinion, is not because of anything externally stopping us. It's because of our own internal perspective with the Aquarius influence. So that was my other thought as well. Like, we are getting downloads right now about what our life could be, but we're feeling a little bit restricted about it. And we're going to have to break through the restriction to our own mindset so that we can set ourselves free and move forward, which also continues on that message that I gave in my past few videos. If you are, especially my last video about the full moon in Leo, about how Aquarius is ruled by Saturn and Uranus because it talks about freedom. Uranus at what cost? Saturn. But I also wanted to note that Aquarius talks about our higher mind and higher inspiration. Uranus, that we may be blocked to. Saturn, that we're going to have to figure out how to work around in a more coherent and complete way in order to move forward. And I do think that that's a thing that's going on here, especially with this inside degree, that we're going to have to work through. So I hope that helps. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like it on YouTube, subscribe to my channel, share it with your friends, and I will talk to you later.